Hi, welcome back to True Story with Jon Gibson. Today's guest is a retired mixed martial artist, author, father, Jon Fitch.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey, my pleasure, Jon. Usually in these interviews, I kind of go chronologically over people's career and it's all sort of about positivity, but you had such a extensive career. I mean, really, you had and it's hard for me to just pick because I was a fan for so long. So I thought maybe I'd kind of just touch on some highlights and maybe try to catch folks up to like what's going on in your life now.
Yeah, perfect, man. Awesome.
So kind of with that, kind of as a little context, from a fight perspective, instead of sort of asking the generic question of like, tell me about a highlight, highs, lows, and those parts of things of the journey, I'm actually really fascinated. I'm fascinated with you for a couple of reasons. Because our wrestling careers kind of collegiately all sort of mirror each other. So I love that. I know what it takes from a character perspective of who what you did and you stepped up, and I admire you at the Division I and all that stuff. But you took that foundation, I feel, as a fan and that grittiness into fighting with you. And man, I'm so fascinated by how you can you kind of share a little bit about experience, your first fight with Mike Pyle, but ultimately you lost that fight, man. And you came back and you fought again. And it's like, no one does that. So I'm so fascinated by obviously what led you there. Can you share the experience about the fight itself? And then what was that next step after?
Man, that was really it was the Wild West back then. Nobody knew exactly how to train. No one knew exactly. There wasn't a system. It was just everybody was just kind of getting around. And I managed to get my first fight because I wrestled at Purdue, and Tom Erickson was an assistant wrestling coach there. Tom Erickson fought in Pride. So we had some connections in the MMA community, and he was able to find somebody and get me on that card. I had never heard of Mike Pyle before. I had never sparred before that fight.
You're kidding.
I fought 7 times before I had ever sparred.
Wow.
Okay. I went to the fight I had no coaches. I went by myself. I treated it like a wrestler. I thought it was like a wrestling tournament.
Yeah.
I went to, it was in Vegas at the Stardust Hotel, wing-in spot. And they flew us out there. We had the medical stuff. I was able to use Purdue's because I was a grad assistant at the time. So I was able to use Purdue's medical stuff and insurance to do my medical testing for the fight. So that made that kind of easy. And then I went to the fight, had no coaches, went by myself. The mouthpiece I had was some terrible 2-sided mouthpiece I got at just the mall in West Lafayette where Purdue University's at.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the site. I didn't have coaches. I didn't bring a cup. So I didn't have a corner. So they're like, who's your corner? I was like, I don't have a corner. They're like, oh, you need a corner. I was like, oh, so I had to ask somebody to corner me. This guy, Amir, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Amir, he was one of Boss Ruden's guys.
Sadala?
Sadala. Yeah, one of Boss Ruden's guys. And it was Amir and an actor from, his name's Holt. And he,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Guns Out, Lights Out, the boxer, maybe.
No, he was an actor. He's a big actor. He was in Fight Club.
Oh, yeah. The show was Lights Out. Holt something. Okay. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I follow him on Instagram. I was like on McCreary or I can't remember. But anyways, so it was like Amir and Holt were at my corner, right? And at the time, this was like 2000. First fight was what, 2002?
I think, yeah.
2003. Yeah, I graduated 2002 and it was right after. So yeah, 2002. So Fight Club was still a big movie. We were watching that movie religiously. Man,
for sure. And then he's cornering you.
Yeah. So it was one of the things that was like,
wow.
There's a line in that movie is like, how much of how do you know who you really are? How much of a man do you know you are if you've never been in a fight or whatever? So I was like, man, that hit me because I've been in fights with teammates practice, but that doesn't really count. And then the drunken brawl fight where everybody's hitting everybody, that doesn't really count either. If it's one person on one person and it's just you, I was like, I've never really done that.
Right.
How tough am I? What kind of a man am I if I've never even had that kind of confrontation? So that was a big thing to get me into the fight anyways. And so I'm out there, Holt's in my corner. I got Amir. I didn't bring a cup. Amir let me borrow his steel cup, his Thai cup.
Yeah.
So I had I wore his cup. He ended up letting me keep it afterwards.
Yeah, good guy.
But I had never fought. I'd never sparred. So they said the bell went ding, ding, ding. I was like, oh shit, this guy's gonna hit me. I was like, I didn't really know what to do. So then we ended up getting to a clinch, and I tried to throw him, and I threw myself to my back. And it was very quickly because he had been doing jiu-jitsu for a while.
Yeah.
He went quickly to the mount, and then I turned my back and the choke. And it was like under 2 minutes probably. And just the rest of the time, I was like, well, fuck. I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. And I was like, no. That lasted for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I should just take my degree and go be a teacher. But then I was like, no, fuck that. I was like, I can't go out like that. I can't have one fight. And then I didn't even hit him. I was like, no, you're doing it again. You're going to fight again.
I love it.
And luckily, when I was at that event, I had met Brian Ebersol.
Oh, cool.
Brian Ebersol was he wasn't wrestling for him at the time, but he wrestled at Eastern Illinois for like a little bit. And that's where Matt Hughes wrestled. So he got plugged in early to what we call the Midwest circuit.
Yeah.
So the Midwest circuit was like the Midwest fights going on. So he knew some of the promoters, some of the fighters. So he had a lot more knowledge than I did with that. And like he had been fighting since he was 19. So he'd already had like 3 years of fighting under his belt by the time I'd met him. And so he was kind of like my first makeshift manager. He would hear about the fights, and we would hear about a fight in another state that maybe would have somebody for us.
Yeah.
We would pack up and we would drive to Iowa. We drove to Minnesota. We would drive these places, and then like, you got somebody.
Yeah.
And they'd have a fight for us.
I'm so inspired by those stories, and it's like you and I were actually.
I made $500 for that first fight, which I put it all into a dog. But then like that was the most I made until an 8-man tournament I fought.
Really?
where I made $1,500. If I beat 3 guys, I made $500 per fight.
Great. Was that a one-night tournament, I presume?
Yeah.
Crazy, unbelievable. Only in your 20s can you think like, oh, my body could handle that, or like.
Well, I had fought more than one time in a night 3 times.
Whoa, you're kidding! Wow.
I did. There was an amateur one in Iowa, Extreme Challenge, Monty Cox's event, where you had to pay $90 to enter the event.
Wow.
Like 2 guys won that.
Wow.
And then I fought Brad Kohler had a show in Minnesota, Ultimate Wrestling, and I fought a guy, and then I went to the back. It wasn't the back, it was the softball field. So I went to near the porta potties at the softball field where guys were warming up, and then Brad Kohler said, hey, the crowd loves you. I'll give you $100 if you fight again. And I was like, I don't know. And then Ebersol looked at me and he says, bro, he hadn't fought yet. He says, bro, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
He's like it was $100. It's $100.
Yeah.
Need gas money.
Yeah.
But I ended up, I said, okay, fine. I left my gloves on and fought. And then I knocked the guy out with like one punch. He fell down, and I jumped on his back, and I hit him again, and I broke my thumb.
Oh no!
And that was about $7,000 of
course, yeah,
to fix the thumb for that extra $100. But luckily, I think there's enough times passed. But I had one of the wrestlers, because I was a grad assistant at the time, say that I was wrestling with him on a Sunday, and I broke my thumb, and then Purdue paid for the surgery and everything. So.
Look, you got to do what you got to do. I understand.
And then the 8-man tournament was 3 fights in one night in Mexico, in Juarez, Mexico. There were guys smoking cigars, like cage side.
This is crazy.
I swear I saw chicken feathers like around. It could have been from like a performer's boa or something, but I was like, probably not.
Yeah.
It was like a famous boxing arena. Too.
Yeah.
So we fought, and I fought 3 times that one night. And it was you could wear wrestling shoes and kick.
Wow.
Knees to the head on the ground. There were soccer kicks. There were elbows. Everything was allowed.
Oh my God.
I was like, you can wear shoes. I was like, hell yeah. So I was wearing my shoes and like.
It's like old school Valley Tudo. That's insane.
Pretty much. And then they did they really wanted to emphasize the stand-up. So they did 4-minute rounds with like a 1.5-minute break in between the rounds, because they wanted to give the stand-up guys the break in between the rounds of rest, and they were fast stands-ups. They were telling them to stand up as soon as they could. So like we got stood up a lot. And like the guys I fought were all, you know, good guys that night too. Yeah, they're all good, and they're all guys who would have been able to fight in the UFC level, you know, now.
Wow,
you know,
that's awesome.
It was a fun little experience.
Who was, and it's not chronological at all, but since you touched on it a little bit, who were some of your stand-up influences from that perspective? Because I feel like, you know, again, from a wrestling background myself, I was attracted to your game that way. But man, your record, you have a ton of submissions and you have a ton of TKOs. Like, you've been very successful in that regard too. So can you, like, I guess I've just never heard, or I just haven't heard kind of about that. So from a coaching perspective, like, who helped you, like, with kickboxing and stand-up?
So a big part of my success is the fact that I was always my coach.
Oh, wow.
I was my coach,
dude. I mean, you're so cerebral.
I didn't teach myself the technique of how to do things. Like, I had specialists come in and show me how to throw the punches, how to throw the combinations, how to do the footwork. But as far as like being my head MMA coach, that was me. Like, I strategized. I said, no, you need these skills to do these things. I could recognize that. I would coach my coaches how to coach me.
I understand that a little bit.
I knew what I needed to do because I could see it enough. Like, everybody has their ego, and you would work with people and they would want you to fight like them. Or
right.
Like, I'm like, I'm not you. So a big argument I had with a lot of guys, I had shouting matches with a couple coaches because they wanted me to do certain things. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that, because in boxing, yeah, you can't punch your way and get close. You don't want to get close and smother yourself. But in MMA, yes, I do. Like, if I get this close to somebody, that's my advantage. There's nobody else who's going to take advantage of that situation better than me. I'm not going to listen to you and get out of that range. I want to be in that range. Don't tell me to do the opposite of what's going to win me the fight. So like, there was a lot of things that we had to like agree with each other on. I had to like make them see me do it in practice and sparring. And they're like, okay, I see what you're saying. I understand. Because like back then also, you didn't have the mix of mixed martial arts as much. You had very segmented or compartmentalized, right? They're compartmentalized. You know, little boxes. There's the boxing guy, there's the kickboxing guy, there's the Muay Thai guy, and there was the jiu-jitsu guy, and there's the wrestling guy. And each guy was like behind the other guy's back. That. But I'm like, whatever. I wouldn't listen to that noise. What I would do is I would listen to them, learn as much about that discipline and get as good as that discipline as I could. And then I would pick and choose the things from it that fit my style and help me out the most.
You mentioned this a little bit, and maybe it was offline, well, maybe we can speak to it, but you said that you journaled for years to document this stuff.
Still do a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess maybe two-part question in that. And one, like, what about you kind of gave you that approach, that cerebral approach to say document? And I guess it's just so out of the box to think big picture like that, and to be intuitive. And a lot of people can't be that objective. Like you said, there's ego. So I guess, like, what motivated you to approach it that way?
So I had a really shitty wrestling year. And I have a book out called Failing Upward, Death by Ego. And it is the first book, and it's going to be a series of books because I have a lot of journals to go through. But what happened was, I talk about it in that book, which you can buy on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it today.
I also have the Weight Cut Bible is on Amazon also.
Hey, 30 pounds and what is it? 8 weeks?
30 pounds in 8 weeks.
I got you, bro.
Yep. But yeah, so what I did was, after it was like my sophomore year where I started. So it was like the first time I was like really the starter, and first time I was really cutting weight too. So I had problems, but I also wrestled a lot of top guys. I think I wrestled like 16 of the top 20 guys that year, and I wrestled one of them twice. So like, I was wrestling really tough guys because I was at Purdue and wrestled a lot of Big Ten guys in Iowa, and just tough people. Yeah. And so after that shitty year, like, I'm not used to losing. I went 8-31, 8 wins, 31 losses. Sure. And that's somebody who was like, I placed twice in high school, state, Like I was the man most of the time. I wasn't used to that at all. So I was like, when you have such a bad experience, it's either like you quit and you give up and you realize, oh, I'm not cut out for this, or you double down. You're like, I need to just focus on one thing and whatever. And I realized I had to cut a lot of bullshit out and I had to work a lot harder. So I started to do that. But at the same time, our coach gave us all little journals. And they're supposed to be like workout journals. Here, take these, document your workouts, your weight, what you're doing. And we're supposed to use it for the spring. It was after the season, spring and summer, until the next year. So like we see how progress was going. And I did. I used the journal to keep, progress reports and like, what did I do? What did I lift? There's a lot of stuff of me being hard on myself because I missed a workout because I got drunk the night before, or whatever. And then, I cleaned up my act a lot. And man, like the next year I had a very successful season, for me in Big Ten, and then I got hurt around Christmas time. So I missed half of my junior wrestling experience. And then senior year, I had a pretty good year too. I was overtime. I was an overtime point away from qualifying for the nationals. And it was against a guy who was a 2-time All-American already. So like I was this close to maybe being All-American, I just missed it.
Yeah.
And the process of writing everything down really, I think, helped because it changed my attitude. It changed how I did things and approached things. And I kind of stopped, I kept the journal from the spring till beginning of the school year next year. And then I stopped because I kind of had the program in. But then I started, I graduated, was a grad assistant and started fighting. And then I had stumbled across the journal again. And I was like, oh, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I should try this again. Maybe I should document this again. And it was shortly after my, I think my second pro loss, which is Wilson Govea. And that loss really kind of opened my eyes because Govea was a full-time fighter. That's all he did was train and fight.
Yeah.
Because he was at American Top Team at the time, and they had money from investors who were paying these guys to just train and fight.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can't compete with guys who are only training. Like if they're training 2-3 times a day and that's all they're doing, they don't have to have a job because they're taken care of. I was like, how are you gonna touch that? I was like, you can't. And I was in Indiana. There was no one to train with. There wasn't no black belts around. There was nothing. Maybe some Taekwondo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I could drive to India and maybe find a boxing coach.
Right.
Like it just wasn't easy to get the training needed. So I found my way to California and AKA. And I had already started the journal. I documented the process of moving out to California. And, I just kept up with it. And as time progressed, the journals got more detailed and I started putting more in, because at first it was like 7 a.m., get up, lift, run.
Sure.
I ate well today. Weight is this much. And that was like the day's entry. But then over time, it became like, oh, I felt like shit today. This girl hurt my feelings and whatever. It was like everything. And then as I noticed when I started fighting and I was with the UFC, that like it really helped to be able to backtrack to other fight camps and see where I was. Like, oh man, look, like 3 fights in a row, I hit a wall around the 5th, 6th week and I felt like shit.
Right. Yeah.
So the next fight camp around that time period, if I felt that creep of like overtraining, whatever, I was like, hey, you know what? I need to take a couple of days off.
Kind of pull back. Wow. Man, that's awesome. It became a tool for you. Yeah.
Yes. And then instead of feeling like shit for 7 days, I felt a little off for 1 day, took a break, got my mind and my body back, and then had a great finish to the rest of the camp. The training camp for GSP, I went to Hawaii for a week.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Can we talk about just that?
It was about 4 weeks. I think I remember what it was. It was by maybe 4 weeks away or 3 weeks away from the fight. I went to Hawaii and just hung out. No training.
Well, you know what I appreciate about that? It takes such confidence to be able to give yourself a break sometimes. And that is so much more like, we think, especially I feel like growing up wrestling, it's like grind, go,
yes.
And that's great.
But answer in wrestling is always do more.
Right.
right? I'm not feeling right. I'm not feeling good. I'm not hitting this right. I'm not doing that right. What's the answer? Do more. Do more.
Yeah.
Add more. And
Right.
I think part of that is because, the grinding mentality, but also we're confined.
Yeah.
We only have so much time to compete. So
Right.
if like you take time off or you miss a tournament on the weekend because your body was feeling bad, like you missed out on competing. So it's a little bit harder that way, and we don't have seasons in fighting. So it's important to take step backs or even pull out fights.
Yeah.
Like, when you're thinking long-term career, there's a lot of bad things that can happen because you force yourself into a fight. And I did that a few times. And, I think the confidence comes from a lot is of not just doing work, but like if I'm documenting things and I can go back and look and be like, hey, I did this successfully before, I can do it again.
Yeah. So you touched on something there, and I appreciate that. But so I'll kind of speak for you for a second here. So as an individual, I'll say post UFC career, not just post fight career. You've been honest. You've been honest very honest, very transparent about kind of the money you've
Too
made.
lazy to lie.
Yeah. Well, what I appreciate in so many ways is you've been able to explain things on a level that I can understand, and I'm no rocket scientist, but what we don't understand from a fighter perspective is that, you're getting paid X and then you may get paid if you win, which is crazy to me. You have to pay your own taxes.
Every other industry, it's illegal.
It's crazy.
It's illegal. There are studies that show it is a wage suppression tactic. It's illegal. You can't do it in any other industry. You can't go to your plumber and be like, hey man, like I'm going to pay you this much to change my sink out. And if you do a really great job, I'll give you the second half of your pay.
Right.
It's not happening.
Right. And it's just so it's just a silly concept in general, because as a competitor, or let's just say as a fighter in this context, why would being paid $1 incentivize you to fight harder, more? You know what I mean? You're out there in a fight. You're in a fight for your life. You're going to give it your all. You're going to give it your all.
I think that's a big thing. We need a flat pay situation where you do the work. You did the work. You put on the fight.
Right.
If you want to do knockout or performance bonuses, that's fine.
I agree.
But like your base pay should be enough to justify you taking the fight and giving your all. Like if you went out there and put your fucking ass on the line, you did all of this work, like you deserve your pay.
Yes.
Not half of it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartly. Another things that you've touched on.
They do it though is because they know that the worker's always going to assume that they're going to make the bigger chunk.
Sure. Yeah, and exactly.
It's a way to exploit confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and there's a couple points, and I'm glad I have you, because I'm no expert. I've tried to follow the antitrust lawsuit from the high level, from a peripheral level, and I'll touch on these 2 or 3 things, and then maybe you can help guide me to say if I interpreted it correctly, and then share your first. I mean, nobody could, you and the other fighters a part of this, nobody could speak better. You've lived this, you've walked this walk.
Last 10 years, we've had these conversations with hundreds of people, thousands of people even. I've had, conversations with like 50 Congress people talking about Ali Act and what's going on.
Right.
We're pretty well versed.
Yeah. So to that end, right? So I've had conversations with folks like, Mark Kerr, I don't even know, Frank Shamrock, and people who have been sort of speaking about how they've had issues in years exploiting their own likeness, being able to use their own likeness, their own names to go do something outside of fighting.
Like, Dana White made a comment about Paulo Costa and if you want to make that kind of money, you should have started a YouTube channel when you were 13 and gotten that popular, and then you can make money. But like, this is a promoter. His job is to promote. Sure. And he's telling the other guy he's supposed to promote himself. No, that's like, it's your job. Right. If that guy doesn't earn that money because he's not popular enough, it's your fault. You're the promoter. You're the one that's supposed to make sure people know who he is.
Yeah. Well, it also makes less sense to me too, because as a promoter and he's signed to your organization, you have a vested interest in him always looking good. If I were him, I would want my fighters to always look great and have the best shade I mean, because guess what? It's symbiotic that the better he does, the better we do, and vice versa. So why diminish your own product, or, you know, for lack of a better term? And I don't mean to be negative, but there's just certain things that feel counterintuitive there. But again, you've been an awesome advocate for other fighters and stuff. So I guess I say this to maybe I'll kind of leave the floor to you, but can you provide just kind of an update of where things currently are at as far as the antitrust lawsuit?
Yeah, we have, we've received from Judge Bulwark class certification, but it's not finalized because he has to release his written statements about it. He's stated several times that he intends to grant class certification, but he still hasn't done the final thing of writing it out. Once he writes it out, UFC will then appeal, and then from that appeal, they'll get turned down, or they'll throw the case out, which isn't going to happen. Bulwark said that he's right. He wants to write the decision in a way that it's impossible for anybody to appeal it. So that's why it's supposedly taking so long. But anybody who really wants to follow up on what's going on and get all the information they can go to ufcclassaction.com. So we have a website that has a timeline. It has everything that's going on, everything that's happened. So like, if you're a fighter out there, is perfect for you to figure out what's going on. If you're a part of the class, you could be a fighter who is going to be a part of the next class, because this lawsuit covers 2010 to 2017 fighters, about a little over 1,200 guys. They're going to file another class action lawsuit for the guys after that.
Sure.
So the fighters that fought after us, like, they're just going to keep filing class action lawsuits against UFC until they change their business model. Okay, so we're working to get leverage here. We're trying to collect damages because they've stolen at least 60 to 80% of the money the fighters should have been paid, right? And we want to change the business model of the sport so that nobody gets ripped off like this again.
Sure. Have you had, I mean, and don't name any obviously, but I mean, I imagine, have you had a lot of fighters reach out to you and just say like, hey, thanks? Like, thanks for kind of helping.
A lot of guys just don't know, and a lot of people are just so scared. They're so afraid because the UFC has so much power, and other promoters have so much power. Because it's not just UFC. It's not UFC against everybody else. It's all the promoters and managers against fighters. Okay, this is a game of pimps and hoes. Fighters are the hoes. Everybody else is pimping them out. Your coach, your manager, your promoter, the journalists. Everybody makes money off the blood of the fighters. They're all going to get money. They're all going to make money for 10, 15, 20, 50 years. The fighters have a short window of time to make money. Everybody else feeds off that hoe. Okay. So you fighters, if you're tired of being a hoe, stop being a hoe and stand up and fight for yourself.
And yeah, exactly. And I have such, I mean, I've talked about this with so many other fighters and stuff, but I have such admiration for what you do, because with everything you just said, but you also leave a part of your body you're never going to get back in that tiny window. And then the rest of your life, you'll be left with the repercussions.
I have, like, my neck issues are never going away. That's just going to be there. I constantly have to deal with that. I constantly have to pay attention to how I'm sleeping. Like, I constantly have to upkeep and watch my diet. Like, if I have a fat weekend, I eat a bunch of popsicles and sugar, like, that stuff causes a lot of inflammation, and my neck will be stiff and I'll have issues.
Sure. So I kind of switching gears a little, just because I and I apologize for kind of getting negative there, but it's so important that you kind of share that stuff.
I mean, I don't, it's the truth is the truth. You got to talk about it.
For sure. Yeah. And again,
don't walk on eggshells about stuff, or nothing's going to get solved. Like, I'm purposefully offensive about a lot of this stuff because people need to hear it, because it's really, these guys are getting millions, especially the guys on the top. Like, Conor McGregor is the most robbed fighter in MMA history.
See, no one would say that, but like,
they would argue to the death. Oh, he makes his money. But yeah, but he's got Dana's balls in his mouth, and he is getting so much money stolen from him. If Conor McGregor left UFC and made his own promotion, he would make Mayweather money. He doesn't need the UFC. He does not need them, right? But they have him enslaved with their contracts, and he has to play along. Like, there was no reason. Like, when he got to fight Mayweather, like, UFC, he ended up giving them like 30% of his winnings, of his money from that. Like, there was no reason for him to do that. Like, he could have taken them to court and fought them and won, but it would have taken time, and he probably would have lost that fight.
Yeah, he
But
lost
somebody cut them in, so like he's whatever.
Yeah,
like, he's the most robbed. The guys at the top are getting robbed the most.
So do you feel like, what's your perspective on like Jon Jones right now, who's trying to sit out and get paid from his perspective?
He should. Like these guys, like they need to stop sitting on their ass and complaining like little girls. They need to come to Congress with us. Actually come to Congress. Like if these big names come to Congress and talk to people, like shit gets done fast. Like the reason it stays this way and they're able to pay people off and vote different ways and do different things is because there's not enough attention about it. If the fighters aren't standing up and doing anything, why are the politicians gonna take a risk? They're gonna listen to the guy who's giving them money.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting in their face and you're not talking to the right people, like you're not talking to anybody, you're not doing anything. You're just crying like a little girl.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and without action, you have to activate, and without action, something can't get done.
Because that's me going to Congress and lobbying. You see how the sausage is made. You start to understand how things get done, and it's not like, oh, these are sinister, evil people. No, it's the people who have money pay lobbyists to go and talk to the Congress people.
Sure.
If you don't have the money to pay a lobbyist to do it, and you're not doing it yourself, they never hear the other side.
Right.
So they think, the Congress people think, oh, well, the fact is that these guys do good job, and they're paying these guys well, and the sport wouldn't exist without them because they only hear one side. So if these guys don't get off their ass, if they don't go to Congress, like they're always going to go with the people with the money because that's the only story they're hearing.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. They have no awareness. Exactly right.
And that's the same on any issue you might have in politics, people. So lesson one, you protest to raise awareness. Hey, that's great. That's fine. But if you're not writing a bill and then taking it to Congress and lobbying yourself and talking to people, you're just masturbating because you're not actually going to get anything done.
Yeah, you're making noise, but you're not affecting change.
Yes, totally. You're not actively taking steps that are going to change anything. You're just crying.
So, dude, kind of totally switching gears just a little bit, just because I know we're running on time, but I got to touch on this. So, like, you're really unique in like a lot of ways, but like for somebody post however many pro fights you had, 40 or something, I don't even know.
Amateur.
Yeah, man. Like God, how do I say this without it's complimentary. I don't want to sound offensive, man, but like, you're completely articulate, you're still driven. I feel like, and I could tell you've prioritized your health along the way in these things.
And I'm perfect. I could still fight. There's nothing wrong with me without being able to fight, but I'm tired of being exploited. Like, pay me. There's no way that fighting 18 years in this sport, being somebody they would put to main event a card and use my name to sell the card, there's no way that's worth 63 and 63.
Yeah.
Get out of here. You're lying.
Right. Well, not after I don't know what that number is, but I for sure know not after the storied years. And you've headlined so many, you've done arenas, you've had title fights, you've had 2 fight of the night. I mean, credential wise, no, that's absolutely not commensurate to what your experience should be, in my opinion, either. That's crazy.
Even they're like, even if people would say, oh, the boring argument, the Dana White argument, bullshit. Like,
so frustrating.
He said, oh, he's boring, but then I'm a main event.
Multiple times after that. And you won 2 fight of the nights. And the fact that, dude,
it's just BS that they push and like, whatever, dude. No,
it was a weird narrative, honestly, John. As a fan of yours from back then, when that was like news breaking.
Well, it was interesting because you could see it in real time change. It was weird. It was before the lead. It was the lead up to the second Thiago Alves fight. You could really see it because I was arguing hard. Like, this is stupid. There's no way that I shouldn't be getting another title shot because I've beaten everybody. There's no one else for me to fight. They flipped the script from performance-based results and giving people chances to popularity and excitement. They turned everything to excitement. And even the press corps switched their questions around, like about excitement. So I'm pretty sure a lot of press people got talking points sent out to them about what questions to ask and what to talk about and how to change the narrative and control the narrative. And it's just kind of gross. It's like, really, that's the only thing you want to talk about is excitement, and winning doesn't matter anymore. And I was like, then it's not a sport, it's pro wrestling. And sure enough, that's exactly what they've turned it into. Like, their whole business model is pro wrestling. It's pro wrestling minus the premeditated outcomes.
It's
real, but everything else is just a production. It's a television show.
It really did change generationally for sure and all, but it definitely became more of an entertainment era product opposed to like, you know, just record based for sure. I mean, you had guys like several guys on street.
It was entertainment, a product. I say it's a production versus a sport. Like a sport has as few restraints impeding competition as possible. If something exists in a sport that doesn't need to be there for competition to take place, it needs to be removed.
Yeah. Did you feel like systemically you were kind of treated the same in all organizations, or do you feel like some, I mean,
they're all in on it
really well, or others?
It's pimps and hoes, and when the court case finalizes, you know, and the emails come out and people get to see how the promoters treat each other, they're all kissing the UFC's ass. They're all working for the UFC. Yeah. All the managers work for the UFC. Like there are emails of promoters undercutting their own people and managers undercutting their own fighters in order to gain favor with the UFC.
Yeah.
So like there's going to be multiple lawsuits of fighters against their managers because the managers robbed them because they cut a deal with the UFC for themselves and their stable of fighters versus doing the best thing for their fighter. The manager is supposed to have a fiduciary responsibility to the fighters. That's not happening.
Yeah, first and foremost. Yeah, they work.
Does not happen in MMA at all. And then you have a situation of some managers today. You'll have a manager that has 200 fighters under his wing.
Right. Which is crazy. How is there not a conflict there? Well, it's
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in the NBA and NFL, whatever, it's like the manager are like limited to like 3 guys.
Right. I won't say
you end up getting a situation where the manager undercuts their athletes for themselves or for the larger group, which is not how it's supposed to work.
I know you're being honest. For one, you're not lying, but I know firsthand you're being honest because I had a current Bellator welterweight champion, but he's on a streak for sure right now. Come on this very show, and he said that he had an opportunity to go to Bellator earlier in his career that he never knew about because his manager represented another fighter that he gave the spot to without telling him, kind of in a way. And then that guy lost. And then, so he was fighting, you know, on an independent circuit for another 2 years.
Yep.
And, you know, it's just like so unfortunate because like you said,
that's not an uncommon thing. That is more common than you would ever believe. I think that Nate Quarry had an incident like that happen to him also.
Really?
Yep, I'm pretty sure, and that's a number of things. I think Brandon Vera had a weird thing too, where his manager didn't tell him about a contract offer and some other things. Like, all the time, happens all the time. These it's gross. Like I'm telling you, it's like that's one of the reasons why I haven't really hardcore gotten into training fighters because I'd be a pimp.
Well, you know, you read my mind because you know I feel like. Yeah, it's interesting. That's what I was going to ask because you certainly have so much to offer them, but you just don't feel like maybe it'd be a conflict for you?
A little bit because I know what's happened. I know you're going to get ripped off. I know you're going to get robbed. I know you're not going to get paid what you deserve to get paid. And in a sense, that means I'm not going to get paid what I should be getting paid either, but I can cover that because I can have 20 fighters fighting and making money off of all of them. Right. And, you know, I got 20 fighters who are getting ripped off, but, you know, I'm pooling their money together to make off of them. So like, I'm doing okay. Right. I'm not cool with that. And so like one of the reasons why my business model now is I'm doing seminars, small groups and private lessons. So like I travel, you know, I want to travel to go and teach people, travel different countries, travel different states, travel around the city. And I'll teach regular people how to do stuff. Whoever wants to pay me for it. But like,
that's great. And then
it's just weird. And then like even the IBJJF is sketchy now too. They're becoming like a UFC of jiu-jitsu.
It's definitely getting more marketable for sure. And it's different. It's definitely different. It's getting more active. Coming out of COVID, I'm glad to see things opening up. But yeah, that's a whole nother world for sure.
It's a whole COVID. Because I'm in California, we're waiting for the 15th for them to announce whatever. I got a really bad feeling about it.
Yeah. Well, keep my fingers crossed.
Keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I got a really bad feeling about it. I got a feeling that the kids are still going to be homeschooled.
I hope not. It's crazy. So I'm in Chicago and we were opening up, you know, and I'm like, okay, it's about time here.
You keep talking about variants and different type of ideas, and it's just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't trust those people.
Yeah. Well, you're at, like, I guess to earlier, maybe again offline, you're one of the few people hanging in there in LA. One thing you touched on real quick,
I'm
actually,
in San Jose, but it's still California.
yeah, you posted something, and I'll let you kind of go on this final thought, but this question, but again, you inspire me kind of other ways and stuff. And I'm going to read your book for sure. But you'd made a post the other day that particularly I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. And it was just you kind of just drilling with your son, just a little stand-up thing. And you'd made a quote like something to the effect of, I hope my kids never, confront violence, but if they do, they'll be prepared.
I hope they're never faced with violence, but if they are, they'll be ready for it.
Man, I'm a daddy. That one got me. And I just love that from a perspective. I don't know. I love that you shared that, gave that insight and all. And like, can you share just 2 minutes of your philosophy from that perspective, as a fighter to your children? Like, what do you want to bestow on them as martial artists?
Me, I think just in general, as a level of confidence, just knowing that I can walk into any environment and not feel physically threatened is huge. And what that does with making friends, finding dates, like getting promotions and all that stuff, like being able to be a confident person and walk with confidence and being comfortable with who you are, it makes a big difference. And right now it's the safest time in human history, right? It's the safest time, but it's still dangerous. There's still danger out there. And I'd rather not have something bad happen. Some crazy person had a bad day, because people have bad days.
Yeah, of course.
I'd rather my kids know how to handle themselves, how to handle, and protect people around them that they care about, than not. The whole adage, it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener at war. It's very true. Like, that's what I want my kids to do. I tell them that. So, they don't have to fight. I tell them, like, you don't ever have to fight. You don't have to wrestle, but like, you're going to know how to defend yourself. You're going to know how to do this stuff. Like, I'm going to teach you wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and fighting, because one, I want you to have confidence. Two, I want you to be able to defend yourself if something happens. And then three, like, I want to give you a job skill that, like, all else fails, you can at least teach people and make some money.
Yeah. Awesome.
If you can be knowledgeable enough to teach people private lessons for $100 an hour, if you can raise yourself up to the level where you can charge that much, you can teach 3 private lessons a day, 7 days a week, you'll make $100,000 a year.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's achievable. It's totally possible.
That's achievable.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's great.
We're starting now, and they can do that. If I've got them training now, like casually, they can have enough skill and knowledge by the time they're 18 to 20 years old to start that now. So, like, they're going to be able to fund whatever job or education or whatever they want to do. Like, oh, well, I'm just going to go pick up some clients and teach people. Because people always want to learn. People always want to learn how to, they want to learn martial arts. They want to learn how to self-defense, but they're also just want to be in shape. They want to get out and do something fun. If you can teach them something fun, have them have a good time, get in shape, and learn something from you, you got a job. Yeah.
That's wonderful, man. Incredibly inspiring. So people should reach out to maybe, is it jonfitch.net for the online
jonfitch.net jonfitch.net is my website. You can sign up for a newsletter. I send newsletters out here and there. I try to get them out every week, but sometimes I get it out. But I do that. And then if you want to book for seminars, small groups, or private lessons, you can email my partner, Leah at jonfitch.net. Great.
Actually, I think I have Leah's info, but perfect. Yeah, that's great for everyone. Jon, man, thank you so much again for coming on the show. I'm sorry if I made you go over your time a little bit, but totally fascinating. Again, I really do appreciate your insight. This is True Story. Jon Gibson, Jon Fitch.
Awesome, guys. And you can check me out Sunday nights. I have a podcast, Jon Fitch Knows Nothing.
Yeah, thank you, Jon.